This podcast is brought to you by Radio 786.
Let's go into our legal hour. The Office of Chief Justice has partnered with Radio 786 for a weekly radio outreach program. This program takes place over the next 6 weeks. So we're already in episode, 5 already. And so access to justice at the core, or is at the core of the OCJ's mandate. As such, it is the organization's duty to ensure that members of the public are aware of the services offered or afforded to them at the superior courts. Public awareness around court processes remains a vital element in ensuring access to justice and the understanding of the role of the superior courts. So today we speak about directives issued by the Judge President. And it's an absolute pleasure to speak to this wonderful lady, Nicola Hanekom, Acting Chief Registrar at the Office of Chief Justice. Nicola, a hearty welcome. Good afternoon and hi.
Good afternoon. Hi. Thank you for having me. I am smiling, even though you can't see my smile. Thanks for having us again. Thanks to everybody who's been tuning in. We've been receiving such wonderful feedback.
Wonderful, Nicola. I can hear and I can see, sometimes you can hear a smile. And so I can hear that smile and I can actually feel that warmth. Thank you so much, Nicola. And thank you to the listeners for the feedback. And so this is what this platform is about uplifting and informing. So let's get straight into this very interesting topic of discussion, directives issued by the Judge President. So let's get an understanding what this practice directive issued by the Judge President is all about. So who issues these practice directives?
Absolutely. So before I get to who issues them, it's important for us to differentiate between the different guidelines that we as the courts, are subject to. So we have the Uniform Rules of Court, which all the courts and specifically the high courts are subject to. And then each division, each high court has got their own practice directives, which are sort of practical implementation of those rules of court as it relates to court process and court procedure and how matters run through the court. So the practice directives are issued by the Judge President of that specific superior court. The Judge President is the head of that court, the head of that court's judiciary and the judges at that court, and they're usually the most senior judge at that division. The Judge President at the Western Cape High Court is the Honourable Judge President Mabindla Bukwana. She's been our Judge President since the beginning of the year, and she's the one ultimately that issues the practice directives that our court is, that we must adhere to.
Okay, so what are practice directives? Let's get an understanding what that is.
So as I said to you earlier, we've got these rules, uniform rules of court, that all of the courts throughout the country are governed by. The practice directives change from division to division because each division, depending on its needs, will have different practice directives, which are sort of like guidelines or instructions that are used to streamline that specific court's operation and to ensure that we have efficient case flow management. We want to make sure that matters are being adjudicated on efficiently. So directives can cover a wide range of topics dependent on what that division requires them to cover. They can address court backlogs. You may find that the division in the Western Cape, we have a lot of a certain type of matter which you may not have in other courts. So that's why those practice directives vary. They also cover things like the court online platform. They manage things like access to the court during an emergency. I mean, everyone will remember COVID-19 and how that changed our world as we knew it. The practice directives were used as a way to manage access, people coming into the building for an emergency situation like that. And they can even a guide on how specific type of cases are handled. So, for example, like insolvency matters or road accident fund matters, surrogacy matters, foreclosures, all different types of matters. Sometimes they require more specific guidelines other than what is in the rules of court to ensure that they get dealt with fairly, but also that all matters are subject to the same procedure.
Nicola, so what do they mean and why are they so important?
Well, they're important because of the high volume of cases that we're receiving. We need to make sure that all of our cases are dealt with fairly, as I explained. And in essence, the directives issued by our judge president are guidance, and they ensure consistency in the operation of that specific court. And that, one person that comes to court for an eviction, for example, doesn't experience a completely different procedure to the next person. We need to make sure that we have consistency in our matters. And we also need to make sure that we're promoting efficiency and access to justice for the people that come into the court system. So as I said, we're dealing with this high volume of matters, and we need guidelines to ensure that those matters are concluded fairly and efficiently and effectively.
Nicola, I think we must maybe let's speak about some common types of practice directives. So and this obviously will, or hopefully it will give us a better understanding as well.
Sure. So as I said earlier, the practice directives vary from division to division. So a practice directive that we have in the Western Cape, you might not find in Gauteng or in Limpopo or wherever else throughout the country. But some of the common things that they cover are, like I said earlier, access to the court during an emergency. These directives will then outline procedures for example, virtual hearings or remote court operations. It's not only, we always seem to jump to COVID, but there's also other types of emergency situations. You may have a fire in the building or and urgent applications still need to come before our court. So those directives cover those sort of emergency situations. Then we also have case management directives, which is the sort of most common kind of directives. These are the directives that the attorneys and the litigants, the in-person people coming into the court must adhere to. Those are the guidelines that they need to follow when they are busy moving through their court matter. So to ensure the efficient handling of cases, the judge president may issue directives on case classification, on trial enrollment timelines, roll call, that kind of thing. So it's all how the matters are managed at the court. They can also issue directives, and we're currently busy rolling out Court Online nationally. So we usually have a directive issued by the judge president that explains to people how to use Court Online, and sort of the instructions and the guides that go with litigating through this new online platform. So you will often find that just before a court goes live, we went live in December, the judge president will issue a directive which then the attorneys, the advocates, the in-person litigants, all the people that are making use of the court, they can then refer to those directives as a guide on how to sort of practically manage their matter. And then also we have directives for specific type of cases. I was mentioning earlier insolvency matters, RAF matters, sort of bank foreclosure kind of matters, surrogacy. All of these matters are they're quite independent to themselves. They've got very specific legislation and rules that come into play. And so the practice directives are an additional guide on how these matters are managed. If I just use the Western Cape Division as an example, we have a specific dedicated road accident fund roll on a Tuesday, and that comes from our directives. There was a need identified for a specific court role for those types of matters. And so a directive was implemented where, on Tuesdays, those matters come before a certain judge. So that's just an example of where a certain type of matter would require, intervention with the practice directive. And then the last thing is sort of just general court operation, allocation of judges to matters, any processes that we feel we're trying to streamline or make the process more effective. We use the practice directives to implement sort of those solutions that we find to common problems and specific type of cases that need solutions. So yeah, the practice directives can be quite wide, and they can cover various types of topics depending on the need of that court.
Yeah. And just in wrapping up then, Nicola, for those that would like to know more, where can they go? Any websites that you'd like to share?
Yes. Absolutely. So as I said earlier, the different divisions, we've all got our own practice directives. On the judiciary's website, judiciary.org.za, you will see that there's a drop down for the different divisions, and specifically the Western Cape division, we are there, and our directives are underneath a drop down there. So all of the different divisions throughout the country, their practice directives are available on the judiciary's website. It's really a wonderful source of information for anybody who wants to find out more.
Absolutely. Looking forward to our next chat, Nicola. So until then, do take care and keep on smiling, and don't forget to say hi.
Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye. Nicola Hanekom, the Acting Chief Registrar at the Office of Chief Justice. So today we were looking at directives issued by the Judge President. Do stay tuned to Radio 786 100.4 FM